Welcome. I am so delighted to see you. So, to everybody, welcome. This is our last session this afternoon. Thank you so much to everybody who has come before. And our final session will be about a project that is inspiring and bringing people together from all over the world. And it's a destination that I can promise has been on my top of my list of places to go for a long time already. So here to discuss the Mat Room, Inviting the World to the Ruins project are Rachel Zager from the United States, an originator of the venture, and two contributors to it from Scotland, Rachel Davies, who is BAMM's new chair, and Helen Miles, editor of Andamento. And Alex McHallen will be watching the Q&A, so challenge her and send her in some questions.
She hasn't done enough today.
We'll go straight to video. Thanks.
Though it's been said you're easily misled, you know where your head is. Some people keep tick-tock, tic-tac-toe talking about the end of the world since the beginning of time been spinning. And every generation has something to say about how everything was better back in the day. Well, let me tell you something, the kingdom ain't coming. I'm not a cynic, I'm not a critic, I'm nothing without your loving now. I'm a headstrong, heartbroken fool with a shotgun, and I won't leave here until I'm done. No, I won't leave here till I'm done. I'm not looking anymore to settle any score. I'm not looking anymore. I lost track way before I even saw him. I saw him. Bye, 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 my baby. Come undone if you want to, hun. Tell me, is it true? Is that all you can do in love and war? Who's been keeping score? I have been. Now I'm a has-been in my own time, getting line in the shadow of a coal mine, in the shadow of a coal mine, in the shadow of a coal mine.
Thank you for joining us in this very specific tour of the Ruins Project. I'm Rachel Sager. There are many ways to experience the ruins. This presentation was tailored specifically for BAMM's first virtual conference. I will be leading you through the art of the ruins, which technically are the leftovers of a bituminous coal operation in southwestern Pennsylvania, the epicenter of the Industrial Revolution. Every time I sit down to write about the Ruins Project in a first chapter kind of way, I find myself thinking, this thing has too many pieces to explain in one sentence, or even 3 sentences. It's like trying to appreciate all the parts of an octopus while it's undulating through the ocean. I make lists of its important points and try to edit others as being peripheral, but that never seems to work. The parts make up the whole. I'm starting to think about it like a diversified portfolio. In the end, the many, many moving parts are what make it stronger. A giant cement canvas for the most powerful medium in the world, Mosaic. This place has come to define me, not just as an artist, but as a human moving through time. What happens here in the next decade is a legacy of history and art that I have chosen to foster. I bought a coal mine by accident. In the deep winter of 2015, I bought a property. You can see my house here, which was built as the office for the coal mine, set into a slice of Appalachian ridgeline on the banks of the Youghiogheny River. This place has witnessed the violence, industry, and power of men. These hills and hollows have cradled immigrants from Eastern Europe, Italy, Russia, Ireland, Germany, and later African American men from the southern United States. This coal mine, Banning number 2, was a quintessential American melting pot. Men and families right off the boat looking for a better life. Languages, cultures, craftsmanship, all thrown together in the brutal hierarchy of a Pittsburgh coal company drift mine. One of my first challenges as the curator and owner of this giant behemoth of concrete was, how do I keep some control? How do I invite the world of artists, these talented, adventurous, vibrant creators, to express themselves, but still preserve the legacy of what this place represents? That question took some serious thinking. And what I came up with has proven to work for everyone. The 3 rules don't limit an artist's vision. In fact, they seem to be giving them a laser focus. Number 1 is to honor what was. Number 2, build relationships with raw material. And number 3, walking the line, my way of describing that beautiful language of Mosaic, intuitive andamento. Number 1, I'm going to go over the rules here in more detail. The memory of the men who worked here and died here, and the legacies of the children and the culture they left behind. Coal has become a 4-letter word and a political football, but the energy of the ruins transcends politics. It dives deeper into the past, while at the same time building a bridge to the present. Long dead miners and contemporary artists traveling through time and meeting each other on these walls. Rule number 2, we don't ship in ready-made mosaic material here. We get dirty as we mudlark in the river, discover the magic of Red Dog, learn the repetitive magic of splitting open rocks with the hammer and hardy, and now discovering transforming glass into Malmescato and Filati. And number 3, some artists come here as experts in their fields. See the far right photo of Annabella Wooer's high-class mosaic language. Others are just stretching into the nuances of andamento and want to challenge themselves to become better artists. The people who come from coal have an honored place at the table here. I invite them to pull up a chair and wax poetic about their buried memories. So many of these proud people will tell me that they don't have stories, but as I'm learning to ask the right questions, I hear scraps and morsels and pieces of stories. These people represent resilience, lost opportunity, family tragedy, and second chances, all because they survived a life supported by coal. Steve Osadvari of Pittsburgh, a son and grandson of coal, has built what I have taken to calling the biggest mosaic train in the world. Until I'm proven wrong, I'm sticking with that title. You may notice that this style of mosaic, the stained glass and the grout, is very different from the other organic andamento styles we use here. Knowing that Steve-O worked big and that his mural style would make this giant train possible, I made an exception to rule number 3, and the results are this 67-foot long, 7-foot tall, true rendition of the locomotive that passed by here for decades. The ruins has become a destination for the modern day traveler, a place of discovery and introspection. One day I will see that a yoga instructor or a dance group have filmed themselves in meditative positions, soaking in what some describe as a reset from life, an escape from modernity maybe. Other days I lead a tour for a family whose grandfather died here, and the words that usually roll off my tongue as I tell my stories get stuck in my throat. Deb Engelbaugh, another local artist, has been here from day one, weaving her clay and tessera together in ways that let the walls speak through the art. So we're not interested in covering these walls. They have their own unique character that time has layered with wabi-sabi imperfections. And Deb's work always seems to let the wall shine through. The Threshold Project is a handful of artists who are collaborating on a larger story about stepping from one world into another, whether that step is your own kitchen doorway, your comfort zone, the portal to a coal mine, or the threshold between life and death. Karen Dimmitt's Youghiogheny Sphinx, seen here on the right, will be the classic threshold creature that looks down on you and asks for your courage to step into another world. The Sphinx is upside down because it's in progress right now. It's on her work table. And if you look up at the buttress in the sky on the left, you can see where she will be installed after the NYC lockdown finally ends. Right now, the Sphinx is stuck in Queens. The ruins artists are seekers of truth in what I call this most powerful medium. They leave their marks, bits of themselves, while pushing their bodies and minds to walk a fine line between improving their craft while carefully imagining their feet in the boots of a 19th century American coal miner. So from the top left here, you see that's my little Frank Lloyd Wright falling water in micro mosaic Falati, only 3 inches by 3 inches. Julie Sperling's right foot, which is one of the fan favorites here. On the right is Annabella Wooer's East Meets West, which is making that connection to the steel industry. Below middle is Margie Cottingham's Portrait of the Miner. That's our first portrait. It's a very large piece. You can't tell from the photograph. And then a very small piece, which you also can't tell from the photograph. That is Helen Miles, that little triangle in the middle of the circle. And Helen sent me that tiny little triangle. I think it might have been the second piece to arrive here through the mail. She was here from the very beginning and she understood what was happening. One of the metaphors of the Ruins Project is the power of time, reaching back into those lithic ages of prehistory when the Native Americans ruled these rivers and hollows, up to the Industrial Revolution, and then sweeping forward to today in all of its frenzy of news, information, and luxury. Frick and Carnegie built their kingdoms from the sweat and sacrifice of the Pennsylvania coal miner. We reserve spaces for the time of the Algonquin tribes, which gave the Youghiogheny River its tongue twister of a name. The winding green ribbon of river that flows in a contrary direction. That's actually what the name Youghiogheny means. And on the right is Wendy Casperson's I Am the Arrow, which is eventually going to be a 26 feet long arrow. And Laura Paul's White-tailed Deer, which was inspired by the Lascaux cave art of France. We solved what could have been a lot of confusion in experiencing the art installations by creating a wall of names, as opposed to signing each piece. Each year, I change the glaze color of the clay name plates, and eventually this small wall will be covered in names. I'm always playing catch up with this, and it seems like the more artists that come, the more artists that come. Nothing is ever quite finished here. It's all in a beautiful state of becoming. Possibility is a word that I throw around a lot. Sometimes this translates into awkward phases, but it's very important that this whole thing not be rushed. There's only one ruins, and I feel it's important to follow my intuition as plans get laid. A big part of my job is either inviting or waiting. Sometimes I seek out a specific artist and invite them in. Other times they show up and they fill a niche that was just waiting for them. On the left, you can see the early days. It was just a disconnected jumble of dabbling and experimenting and had no overall plan. So I took to calling it the hot mess wall. My job for this one was to wait. So I waited until these dozens of post-industrial gears and sprockets and cogs showed up. Today, the hot mess has become the hot metal wall, and it's growing exponentially. Not everyone can get to the ruins. That's why the call for gear artists went international so fast. It was a way for artists to get themselves here without having to cross an ocean or break the budget. And it was also a way for beginners to get their feet wet. The gear diameters are very small and not as intimidating as some more ambitious installations. And what I'm loving is how the metal, some rusty, some shiny, it all pulls these very different mini compositions together and makes more of a cohesive whole. Next. The Tiny Ring project, which turned out to be not so tiny, has been a true 2020 bright spot, partly because of the lockdowns, partly because of their tiny, not intimidating nature, and I think partly because micro Mosaic has exploded onto the Mosaic scene. This project is, to put it simply, making a lot of people happy. I have 200 plus rings installed so far, and I would guess another 200 are being made in studios all over the world as we speak, plus another 300 or so still here in the box waiting for the artists to claim them. So I don't know if it's going to end up being 400, 700. I'm thinking between 500 and 700 total. So it like I said, it's not tiny anymore. I have been teaching a technique called intuitive mamischiato, which is melting, mixing, and pulling glass through fire into unique, one-of-a-kind recipes of color. Each ring is anonymous, but also one of a kind. Here you can see the tiny wall growing and evolving. These are a lot of the hot colors here, the yellows, oranges, and reds, a perfect example of nothing ever being quite finished here. This will eventually be a wide swath of a color wash or a color study once all the rings make their way home. I love how so many of them have crossed an ocean, not once, but twice. So I mentioned the ruins going international so quickly, and I want to use that to lead into a news story. I am a map artist. Cartography, geography, and of course geology have been magnets for my art for decades. As the biggest room here began to take shape with all of these voices from around the world and the nature of that melting pot that was this coal mine, I began to see a giant map of countries, not in a traditional sense, but all mixed up. This map will not be organized by placement or size. So Australia may very well find itself cozying up to Venezuela. Marion Shapiro and Caitlin Hepworth were the first brave souls to take on the challenge. They had every intention of arriving with boots on the ground here, but 2020 had other plans. They were going to install the whole thing in situ. So you're looking at the first country to be custom built for shipping across the globe. These two artists created a heat map or a fire map of Australia, a very contemporary interpretation of their home country and experience. They lead the way in both professionalism and artistic talent for other countries to follow. These are the 12 countries and one territory, sometimes called the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, that are in play. We have Canada, Brazil, Belgium, Israel, Mexico, England, Poland, Ireland, Chile, Venezuela, Turkey, and Slovakia. And this is me making those invitations that I mentioned a while back. The artists who will be representing these countries have committed to following in Australia's footsteps. But each artist has carte blanche to choose the metaphors and materials that will best represent their country. The map room is the biggest space we have here. And at first, Steve-O of the train, were using his vintage light projector in the dark at night to trace the outlines of the borders. It was quite a wild couple of nights up on ladders tracing these countries. And after we traced them, I made templates with Swedish tracing paper and sent them to the first 5 artists through the mail, thinking, when you're in the planning stages of a really big project, you're always making mistakes, right? And it wasn't a big mistake, but we were thinking that fitting the country to a particular spot on the wall was the way to go. Now I realize it can be much simpler. The artist can choose their own template size as long as the border is recognizable. And I can even see some micro mosaic countries in addition to the fuller sized ones. If you look carefully here, you can see Italy with a little Sicily and Sardinia. I still need to add Corsica to that. And the giants of Canada on the right. Canada especially has helped us realize how much simpler this process will be by just letting the artists choose their own sizes and templates. And it will be my job to find their places upon arrival. Islands off of the larger bodies are a particular challenge when you're trying to build a map of Mosaic, a Mosaic map. Curating is critical to the success of what I see as someday being the composition of our global mixed up world. For the last several decades, the world has gotten so small. All of us have been gallivanting across borders, soaking in art history and culture, the foods of foreign places. But now, with our moving so curtailed, this project has taken on an even deeper significance. Borders have become very important in new ways. I see this long-term, ambitious international collaboration as becoming a moment in time and a powerful teaching tool for young students of geography and students of the world too. So as a special unveiling, I want to end my presentation by introducing you to what will be the second country to arrive at the ruins, Scotland, as a collaborative, site-specific, and a term that I'm liking lately, metaphor and material in Mosaic. Rachel Davies and Helen Miles, two talented colleagues that I have been building relationships with for several years, have taken on this challenge. And I want to start by asking both Rachel and Helen some questions about their Scottish Mosaic adventure. Okay, I think I'll start with Rachel and just ask simply, how did you decide to say yes to this project?
After hearing your talk, how could you not say yes to this project? And truly, I couldn't not say yes. You know, I've been a big fan of your work and the Ruins Project, you know, for a long time. And to be asked to be part of that, you know, was just, it was great. But also to be able to work with Helen as well, because again, Helen is somebody whose work I've long admired. So to be able to work alongside her and as a challenge to work out how to work together, because our styles are quite different, but how we could put those together to create the map of Scotland was another challenge. And I think as artists we need to keep giving ourselves challenges and trying out different things, you know, working on a scale that we're maybe not doing so every day. So yeah, there's all sorts of reasons to get involved. As I say, I couldn't say no, and you know, it's been great so far. You know, we're obviously Scotland's still a work in progress. And we will probably still have different challenges and things to overcome as we complete it. But yeah, to be a part of something, as you say, you've so eloquently described, you know, the ruins, just couldn't turn that down.
Well, I'm glad, very glad. The ruins is better with your footprint on it already. You have a beautiful gear here, so.
Thank you.
And Helen?
Well, yes, I just completely second what Rachel said. It's such an honour to be part of this. And that's very sweet of you to include my teeny tiny piece that I sent from Greece really early on. And I remember feeling so nervous and thinking, can I send this tiny thing to Rachel? Will she want it? Because it wasn't solicited. And really, really pouring kind of, you know, my love and attention into that tiny piece, and it you know, meant such a lot to me that you didn't, you know, that you accepted it, and now to come to this, to be actually making Scotland is just extraordinary. I'm really, really pleased and excited, and I think what you're doing is inspirational for all mosaic artists, and I love the fact it's just bringing everybody together, because we're quite a small world and we're quite different, but we are, obviously we share this you know, creative drive and real an understanding of our materials. So I love being part of it. I'm really excited.
Besides your wonderful art, your thinking and writing about mosaic is a very important part of our community, and I've always admired that part of you. and it's really it's inspired me in many ways, just reading your blogs over and over again.
That's
Really,
really fun.
yeah. So, and Helen, again, how did you come up with the design for the country, for Scotland?
Uh, well, I was thinking obviously about Scotland and how it appears to the outside world. So when people who haven't been to Scotland think about Scotland, they think about the landscape and the history. And obviously making a map for the Ruins project, I knew it wasn't going to be in Scotland. So the quintessential, the almost the cliches of Scotland, I wanted to contain within the map. But when people think about the history and the landscape, they think obviously of the natural beauty and these incredible buildings and these castles and, mist on the moors and all of that. But actually, there was a very, very crucial part of Scottish history, which is called the Highland clearances, which happened in the 18th and 19th centuries. And so, essentially, for all kinds of reasons, but mostly for economic reasons, for rich landowners wanted to make more money, then they could make more money from sheep than they could make from people. So vast landscapes in Scotland, which are now considered wildernesses where people travel to see them because they're so amazing, were in fact quite, not heavily populated, but they had a lot of activity in human, villages and people living their lives there, and had been living their lives there for many, many hundreds of years. And then very brutally they were forced to leave the land. So, and of course, many of these people, in fact, they were transported. They were again, they had no choice about it. And they were moved, some of them to Canada and America. And perhaps some of them might have ended up at, working in your coal mine. And because the mine is about stories, it's about people, it's about the kind of minutiae of people's lives. It's not about grand, history, but it's about the people that make up the history. And I wanted to include that in our Scottish map. So I was looking at the map of the clearances, which very helpfully is immediately a strong image that would work very well in Mosaic. So this is the map I was looking at, and as you can see, it's very visually powerful by itself, and it immediately lent itself to Mosaic because Rachel and I wanted to work with local materials, and Rachel's does extraordinary creations in slate and is very intimate. She knows the material extremely well, and I traditionally have worked with much more. I don't know how to describe it, but I like all the kind of antimendo and the flowing line kind of thing. So it was a natural split for us. So that's what we decided to do. So we've begun work, and I've been doing the ready bits, and Rachel's been doing the slatey bits, and we've been doing a bit of the sea together. Yeah, so you can see I tried to sort of represent the movement of people outwards. So the little circles are the villages or the towns where people were forced away, and then the lines are the movement towards the sea if they were going onto ships, across the Atlantic.
That's a great example of using andamento to communicate an idea, right?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yep.
Yeah. So Rachel will tell you a bit about the materials.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as Helen said, the design's been influenced, by Scotland's history, but also we wanted to incorporate, some of the kind of geology, topography of Scotland as well. We have a lot of hills and mountains and things, so kind of almost superimposed over the clearances. We've sort of looking at the mountain ranges within Scotland as well to kind of represent some of those. But in terms of choosing materials, we felt very strongly that we wanted to include as many materials as we could, from Scotland, and we wanted to use materials that we were comfortable using as well. As Helen said, she likes all the kind of little bits she can build the andamento with, and I'm very familiar with working with the slate and creating texture and things. So we wanted to kind of combine those two together. So we've almost kind of got 3 sections of materials that I'll tell you a bit about.
Beautiful.
So, so this slate was an obvious choice for us when we were talking about which materials to use. It's found in abundance in Scotland, and depending on the area of Scotland where it's been formed, you get very different types of slate. So what we've got in the image here on the right hand side at the top is Easdale slate, which is found on the west coast of Scotland. And that has lots of kind of these lovely textures and colours to it. And then on the left-hand side is slate from the central belt of Scotland, much more local to where we stay, and it's got these lovely kind of greeny colours to it. And we've also used, when I work with slate, I have a lot of recycled roof slates that have been on Scottish roofs for years and years and years. So they may not they may be Scottish slate, they may not be, but they've certainly been in Scotland for a long time. And it's always hard to know when you haven't foraged the slate directly to know exactly where it's come from. But I suspect the one at the bottom, the black with the pyrites in, that's kind of typical of kind of a west coast area, sort of Ballachulish slate as well. So you can see that the slate's just got a beautiful palette. We've got different colours and textures within that to create some of the landscape of Scotland. This is some samples of the reds that we wanted to use for Helen to express those Highland clearance sections. And again, we've used a whole mix of stuff. So the top left there is a stone just found a few miles down the road from me. I'm not sure exactly what the technical term. It looks very much like Rachel's red dog. I'm not sure. A geologist told me it was a mudstone of some kind, but it has all these lovely colours in anyway. And we've also got some recycled roof tiles that my local roofer gave to me when he was giving me some slate. He also said, "Do you want to use these?" And they were perfect for the ruins. So they've been on a Scottish roof somewhere. Helen's done beach combing as well, and so she's used some brick, that's been worn by the sea. On the bottom right there, we've got sandstone from Scotland. But we also use, just to add a bit more texture and stuff, some pigmented adhesive as well. So that bit in the middle is just to keep that kind of natural sort of look, but add in, another kind of colour as well. And Helen's added in little bits of glass, sort of little bits of red glass in around some of those as well. So again, you can just see we've got a lovely palette of things to use that create just that much more interest and texture within the piece. This is for the coast.
Oh,
so we knew we had to build the coast. Scotland's got so many islands and things. We had to have something to kind of bring those all together. But the coast is also, part of Scotland as well, and particularly with the clearances, a lot of people who were cleared from like the glens and things were, if they didn't emigrate, they went to the coasts where they helped fish for kelp, harvest the kelp and fishing and things. So the coast is as much part of the story. And we wanted to use, as far as possible, materials that reflected that. So a lot of these are beachcombed fine, sort of the shells and sea-worn pottery in the right sort of colours. We've also added in some of Helen's Greek marble, which isn't from Scotland, from Greece, but we kind of felt that kind of fitted as well, because Helen, those that don't know, Helen learnt mosaics when she was in Greece, and this is very much part of her story as well, her mosaic story. So we felt it really kind of fitted in, that having the right colours and fitting in with those materials. So those are our kind of 3 sort of colour material palettes that we've kind of mixed together. to create where we are so far. And as you've seen from Helen's, one of the images Helen showed, Scotland's still a work in progress. And as we move from the Highlands down to the Lowlands, we may well introduce some other stones or other types of slate or other bits and pieces as we go, depending on how it's all flowing and coming together. I've got various different rocks that I've picked up from various places around Scotland that we can tie in if we need to. But they're our main kind of colour palettes and materials and the stories behind them.
Materials as communication too, right? And andamento and materials. Can I ask you both, do you know, have you decided how many pieces you're going to make this as for sending, for shipping, as a practical question? We've got, at the moment, we're hoping to have 6 pieces. Perfect. That's what Australia was also 6 pieces. So that's good. That's a good, because for me, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but from my end, when I get them in my hands and I have to get them vertical, there's a middle ground where you want them big enough, but not too big where they start to wobble and fall apart as you're getting them onto the wall. So yeah, we've cut mainland Scotland kind of into 4, and then we've got islands, and then we still need to do Orkney and Shetland, which are so far off they're so far north, but they need to be included as well. So so that will be the 6 set as well. So yeah, it's interesting, that you decided to go for a historical symbolism. And Marion and Caitlin went for a much more modern climate change, wildfire interpretation of where they are right now. And I think that is that's something that I mentioned in the speech about how I don't put any parameters on you as the artist. You get to make the decisions on how you represent your country, whether it's modern or the past or culture or whatever. And I think that's great, because some, there are countries watching this right now, I hope, and they're going to be able to see that there's a lot of freedom as an artist to represent your country. So it's very exciting.
Well, yeah, no, I agree. It seems historical, but it really is about the present too. Because I don't think you can understand Scotland now, and especially for people from the outside, unless you understand what had happened and why we have these wildernesses, which are so astonishing.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, and it's the same for the places here. The coal mine, the legacy of the coal mine created certain cultures here. You can think about it as historical, but it plays through right to the present day. Yeah. Now, you also said, I know that you have not, both of you as individual artists have not collaborated with other artists before. So this is your first collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about how that's going?
Yeah. No, shall I say a little bit, Rachel? Yeah. No, it was a real challenge, but such an interesting one, because the whole point of Mosaic is with each tesseract, you're thinking about it in relation to the one that came before and the one that comes next. So you're constantly balancing and juggling, and it's incredibly difficult. I mean, I found it really interesting, difficult in an interesting way is what I'm trying to say, to realise that I can't put the next piece. So Rachel and I started by making these samples. So this was pre-lockdown, so that we could go to each other's studios. So we did a couple of samples. So this is one of them. So at that point, as you can see, I was thinking fairly traditional andamento lines. Mm-hmm. I mean, these again are just lines, but the idea, the difficulty was to leave it open for the other person to interpret and to carry on. Mm-hmm. So once you start laying a line, of course, your natural instinct is to want to build on it and to add more and just to step back and to allow Rachel to take over. So both of us, I think, were careful. So we did we did 4 samples, so these are just 2 of them, in which 2 of them I started and Rachel finished, and 2 of them Rachel started and I finished. So both of us were careful that we allowed the others to expand. Obviously, we didn't close each other in. So that's really important, and it's really important with the map as well. So we've found with little inlets and parts of the hills, the mountain ranges, that it's, you know, essential to always be thinking about the other person as you're working. So that's been really interesting. And just a fascinating, just completely different approach to how you normally work.
Yeah, I think
artists are such individuals, you know, and we celebrate our individual, you know, our voices. So there is a giving up of control in all of that, right? Mm-hmm.
There is that, yeah, very much so. That, you know, and I think we wanted, one of the challenges has been to make the overall map a combined effort, and not be able to say, oh, that's Helen's half or that's my half or whatever. For the 2 stars to kind of come together and be integrated together, I think was one of the challenges as well. And even, you know, although the coastline is all done in the same materials and the same rough kind of style, we've deliberately, you know, Helen's done a bit of it and left some gaps for me to then come and fill in, so it's not all deliberately, because each artist has their own style of andamento as well. So trying to kind of make sure that you didn't fill in a whole area, but likewise didn't close somebody in. You know, that's been a challenge, but also, you know, it just makes you think that step in advance. And if I do this, you know, where's Helen going to come in? And we've initially we cut up the map and said, well, you start half, you know, Helen start half and I'll start half, and then we'll put them together. But then when we sat down to do that, we felt that wasn't really going to work. We needed to be able to respond, you know, start and then just keep responding back and forth. So Helen had started it, and then I've now got it to do my bit, and then it'll be going back to Helen and coming back to me, so that
you're weaving your voices together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you at the halfway mark yet, or are you pre-halfway? Where would you say?
We are probably pre-halfway, or probably almost half of the mainland. So, and we've still got probably half, maybe a third of the islands. So
it'll be interesting to hear your, you know, once it's finished, how many more things you learn about yourselves as you're working with the other person. When I worked with Sophie Druin a couple of years ago on that big 21 piece collaboration, in the beginning, we were not speaking the same language. We weren't coming together at all. And we had to really stick with it and work, you know, hard to get to that place where we were weaving our voices together. And then by the end, you know, it was working. So sometimes you just have to push through the uncomfortableness of someone else, of trying to be someone else.
Yeah, and I've had to learn how to use slate, because really I'm not familiar with it at all. And we did think we were going to split the materials, just because it seemed a natural thing to do, and Rachel really knows her stuff when it comes to slate. Yeah. But there have just been bits where I've just had to. I mean, I love the material. I'm really excited about working with it. So that's been another dimension which has been great for me to do something, to use a material that I wouldn't normally use, because it splits in such a weird way that you can't use the tools that you normally use, but then when it does split, you find something super exciting inside. So yeah, it's.
Have you been finding fossils?
No, not fossils so much as colours.
Mm-hmm. And that's when there's quite a lot of pyrite in it, so you might split something and get some nice sparkly bits. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, isn't it great that the world is getting to see this before it even arrives?
Indeed, sneak preview.
So thank you both for sharing this in progress. Wonderful country. It's one of my favorite countries, by the way. And also in the bigger picture, I think this presentation and this conversation is really going to be important for other countries out there, other artists out there from other parts of the world watching what's happening. And, you know, this is an invitation in a way to to come and become part of the ruins, representing your own country. And Scotland will be on its way. I imagine it'll be arriving in 2021. Is that right?
I imagine so, yeah.
Yes.
It's not going to be
Yes.
installed this year, is it?
No. Everything got delayed a little bit, but 2021 Scotland in the ruins. And I think we're going to open it up for questions from everyone in the audience now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome back. We've got quite a few questions and not very much time, so let's get cracking with it. The first question is for you, Rachel Sager, from Lillian. The maps you showed of countries that you traced on the walls already, did you choose those because they all have mining associations, or not really? It's just
Some. I think the first country I traced may have been Poland. It was one of the most important ones for this coal mine. Hungary also, but I realized quickly that it doesn't have to necessarily be a coal mining connection. It can be a Mosaic connection, and it can also be a general mining connection. Almost every country in the world, I think, has some kind of mining history, whether it's silver or what are the rare earth minerals. I mean, mining is happening all over the world right now, even as we speak. So I think it's very open to interpretation for sure.
okay, great, thanks. A question for Helen and Rachel Davies from Nikki Tudor, but I also asked it. How big is the Scotland mosaic going to be?
I measured it for you, Alex.
Oh, thank you.
Because I knew you might have cut. So at the moment, the mainland Scotland is about a metre high by about 75 centimetres. So it's about 3.5 feet by 2.5 feet. And then we've got bits of islands attached to that as well. But the bulk of the mainland is about that size. So it's pretty big.
Excellent. Okay, some questions that came in during the session. The first one's from Alison McCormack, who asked Rachel Sager, how is the Ruins project funded?
By the seat of my pants. There's not really any funding. We artists work for the love of working, as do I. We have, I give tours on a weekly basis. A small fee to go through and hear the whole story, about an hour long. Actually, the tours are getting longer every month because I'm going to have to start splitting them up into 2 tours. But the only time we've done a GoFundMe was for the big giant train for Steve-O, because it was such a gargantuan project and we had so much glass to buy. But we're in this very, I guess it's a wonderful place to be, that artists are coming and working for the love of it right now. That's how we're doing it. So
great. And also another question for you, Rachel Sager, is what is your vision for the Ruins project in the very long term, like in 100 years from now?
Oh, wow, that I go 10 to 20 years when I usually answer.
We'll go with that then.
But no, I love that. I love that thought. I mean, it's the 100-year mark is representative of what it was before I ended up with it. It has sat for almost 100 years since the coal mine closed. I mean, we work with the best exterior thin set that we can. We were very careful to make put art on the walls that we know is going to outlast us at least. There are parts that are exterior, and we have Pennsylvania winters, so it's not going to be like Pompeii, where you can, a 1,000 years from now, you're still going to see a mosaic on the wall. I don't think that will happen, but the Ruins is in a very beautiful state of deteriorating, I guess you could say. It is a ruins. We're never going to be putting roofs on the up high and trying to repair the actual buildings. So it's becoming and deteriorating at the same time. So I think the bigger question for me is the composition, and that's how I'm seeing all of this substrate, this giant substrate I talk about. I've started to look at it as a composition. And I think somebody asked, I might just answer another question that I saw written. How do I decide? Because I said we don't cover the walls. How do I decide when I'm going to stop? And I don't necessarily know the answer to that either, but I do know that I see it as a composition. So when I'm deciding what's going to go next to the train, it has to help the story forward. We have whatever goes in that room, which we've actually decided is going to be the stable for the horses. We decided that very recently with Gila Rayberg's beautiful piece that showed up last week. And the horses were from a time before the train. And they were, they even called they called the locomotive the Iron Horse. So there's a beautiful complementariness going on there. And I think probably 2020 has been a lockdown, but it's also been huge for what's happening here. And I think I'm going to run out of time faster than I thought.
Oh, really? So, gosh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a question for Rachel Davies and Helen Miles from Sandrine. These small studies done by Rachel and Helen are really interesting in building this collaboration. Did you spend time to reflect together after you had finished each piece in order to proceed with the collaboration?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So that's why we did them, really, was to see how it would work, how different techniques and different and ways of laying the andamento would work in terms of the other person's response to it. So I can't remember exactly, I'm afraid. Maybe Rachel, you can step in here. What we decided based on those samples.
I remember there was one that didn't work. That the way that it was laid and the way that the pieces were. I think it was the way that I laid them down. We were like, that doesn't fit. That's not what we're looking for, and could kind of put that aside. Whereas, particularly, I think the first one that you showed, and I think that one's also in the team up section of the BAMM exhibition with the lovely andamento and the slate round it, that we really like. That thought, we want to kind of build on that to kind of help create the mosaic with that.
Okay. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just thinking about what Rachel Sager said earlier in the film about meshing the two styles together, and I think that's the real challenge with COVID, is that Rachel and I can't work at any point in the same studio. So I know that Marion Shapiro and her collaborator were actually physically able to work together, and I think that is a shame that we haven't been able to do that. But we'll find other ways to work it out.
I mean, when we planned initially, we had sat down and said we would do individual, but particularly towards the end and putting things together, that we would try and have a session or a day where we kind of did come together and work together to sort of finish things off. But we'll work our way around things.
And also I suppose there's the question of you're working at distance together, but also you're working at distance from the site, because presumably neither of you have ever visited it. So you're working, you've seen photos and everything, but you've not actually been there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, neither of us have been to the ruins. I had hoped, initially when this project started, we had hoped to get it finished in the spring, or certainly by the summer, and I was going to go out in the autumn to help install it, which obviously hasn't happened, and we've kind of delayed actually making the mosaic as part of lockdown as well. But yeah, it was really helpful. Rachel Sager sent us a lot of photos of the area where it was going to be installed, so we could get an idea of the place that it was going to be and how it would all fit. So yeah.
Heartbreaking that you couldn't be there. It is. Yeah.
Get there eventually.
Yeah, there'll be other times, I'm sure. Okay, I think there aren't any more questions, so we'll wrap up your session now. Thank you both. Thank you all three of you very much for taking part in the Q&A, and also for taking part today. Thanks very much, Rachel Sager, for letting us into the ruins, and we wish you all success for it, and I'll contact you separately about a piece I've got in mind for it.
Nice.
Very little one.
It was my pleasure.
Good.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Great. And I think Tamara's going to come back in now. We can't keep her out. Now she's worked out how to use her
I'm there.
She's there. So we're now just, Tamara and I are just going to wrap up the day. So thank you three very much for your time.
Thank you.
Phew,
Just the two of us
how was that?
out there. Well, it's been quite a day, hasn't it?
I had so many emotions through those various different presentations. I mean, I nearly cried in the Ships in the Sky. I really, wow, I just thought it was so inspiring to see how that community, how they've gathered all that community stuff and brought people together. I am walking away from this inspired. How about you?
Absolutely.
Did you have any favourite bits?
Well, I really, apart from Lillian's wallpaper, I really liked all the drone footage because, you know, drones rightly get very bad press.
Yeah.
And then you see how they've been used to such beautiful effect, particularly in the Ships in the Sky project, filming the scale of those mosaics. I mean, you just wouldn't ever get an idea of the size of them without seeing that.
Awesome.
Yeah, really amazing. And I've also been really thrilled how we've managed to bring people together who either haven't met before but have so much in common, or you know, or who wouldn't necessarily communicate because they're in different time zones, and we've made them get up early.
I'm sure they'll appreciate that. But I think they will
Absolutely.
appreciate being brought together. And like you say, it's what a great luxury that is, or what a great benefit that is of the restrictions that we have that has made us go through this process and take the forum online. And although it has been a baptism of fire, like
Yes.
you said, it's opened up all these opportunities that I think have been fabulous.
Yes, definitely. So do you want to do the thank yous, Tam?
I have a few thank yous. I think we should probably just go over a few instructions first. So first of all, of course, you all have exclusive access to these videos on the BAMM YouTube channel for 6 months. And you can gain access via the website or the Eventbrite page. And so, yes, of course, a few thank yous. Well, let's start with Lewis, shall we? I think a special thanks for not just the technical support and calm guidance through this process, but also for just putting up with us. I think that's what he really gets the medal for, to be so thank you to him. And also, Alex, I don't know if anyone's managed to say it to you, but thank you to you for all your incredibly hard work. It has been a hoot working with you.
And you, Tam, thank you.
Great. Who else? Yes, of course, our fabulous sponsors, a huge thank you. They've helped to subsidise this event, bring it about, and please show your support for them if you can by using their services or buying their products. Equally, my thanks to all the organisers, the people who contributed, the speakers, the prompt setters, but most importantly, thanks to all of you for showing up today, and also for all of those of you who are watching this in the future. I really hope that you are leaving us inspired and enriched. Yep, don't forget that you can join BAMM. That would be great. We produce these 2 brilliant journals. So we have the Grout magazine, which is very much a newsletter of current things going on in our mosaic world, and Andamento, which is a much more erudite and deep thinking look at mosaics in the modern world. So here at BAMM, we are passionate about mosaic. For me, I think it's really important to connect people, to discuss, to make, to support the people throughout their mosaic journey. And these are all cornerstones of what we do at BAMM. So I hope that you will enjoy revisiting these recordings in the next 6 months. I know that I'm ready to go back and watch them already for the bits that I missed while I was making tea. Did you want to say something? Sorry.
I did. Sorry, I just wanted to say, don't forget to visit the exhibition.
Thank you. Yes, So all the links, of course, are on our website. I have not had a chance to go around the exhibition, but I can't wait to, especially I just want to get into that virtual gallery. But more importantly, I would just like to raise a glass with you, Alex. I know it's 4 o'clock, but...
I've got a cup of tea,
Hey.
love. You're not already.
I raise a glass to Mosaics and making
Cheers.
it. So cheers, and please, all of you watching, do give us your feedback. We can only move forward and onwards and upwards. Please join the conversation, follow us on social media, share your work and be part of this community. But more importantly, stay sane, stay safe, get creative and keep making.
And see you next year, wherever we are.
Cheers.
Thanks ever so much. Bye.
Bye.